So I have a problem with my hard drive in OSX. I can't read or write files from this hard drive on OSX, but I can read and write them on Ubuntu Linux. I was able to access this drive on OSX, and then something happened, and now I can't. But I can still open it in Ubuntu and access all the files just fine. This whole problem is partially my fault because I bought 328 gig solid state drives. I was super excited about Thunderbolt and gave myself pretty much gave myself an incomplete problem when it comes to managing my digital assets. Part of me wants to just nuke all these digital possessions to free myself from investing the time to maintain them. But then I lose all my pictures and videos, and that's sad. The problem I'm dealing with should not have happened. I don't even know why it happened, but because of disk format compatibility problems, I have to waste several hours on a Saturday afternoon to fix it. I've encountered disk format problems several times with OSX, and it really makes me wonder why. Why is this a problem in 2014? Hard drive problems like this probably should have been solved in 1992. The only reason I can think that they are still problems today is because of a continuation of selfish technology business practices in the 90s. And I know you're probably thinking, all these files, documents, whatever, why not just put them in the cloud? Well, because fuck cloud storage, but that's a rant for another day. I'm going to detail the process that I have to take to fix the problem first. That way you can empathize with my pain here. Then I'll explain the frustratingly simple problems with OSX hard drive formats. By the way, this process is going to take hours for me to fix. I don't really want to spend hours fixing this, but whatever. Step 1, I'm going to have to resize my OSX partition. Step 2, I'm going to have to move 128 gigabytes to this new partition from my derped hard drive, which herein I shall refer to simply as derp. Step 3, I'm going to have to reformat derp. Step 4, boot my computer into Ubuntu. Step 5, move 128 gigs back to derp. Step 6, resize my OSX partition, and hope that it doesn't get hosed when I resize it. In the absolute best case, this process will take at least 30 minutes if you're using Thunderbolt with unencrypted hard drives. With USB, this process would take 3 to 4 hours. Luckily, I'm a badass with a Thunderbolt SATA drive. But even with Thunderbolt, if you're using encryption, this process will take between 2 and 3 hours. Let me go over these steps again in more detail. So step 1, I'm going to have to resize my OSX partition. My OSX hard drive is 256 gigs. Right now I've got like 40 or 50 gigs on there, which is great because it's very easy to resize that. I don't really want to have to do this, but because Ubuntu can't write to OSX formats, I have to. There's always a chance for your disk to get hosed when you resize it. It's just something that can happen. This risk is a lot higher if your disk is encrypted. If your disk is encrypted and the resize process is terminated early or just locks up randomly, then you're fucked. It's really difficult to restore your data if a resize process is halted in the middle of that. And if your data is encrypted and the resize process stops in the middle of that, it is extremely difficult to recover your data. I'm not a DD master, so I'm not going to be able to do that. So it's wise to back up your drive at this point, especially if it's encrypted. I haven't included the backup time in the estimates. About a month ago, I hosed an encrypted partition on OSX because disk utility locked up in the middle of a resize. My disk was encrypted, so I realized that there was pretty much no chance for me to recover that data within any reasonable amount of time, which made me not very happy. If the disk is encrypted, resizing the partition will take much more time as well because it has to perform operations on each region of the disk that it reads. If the disk is encrypted, resizing the partition will take much more time as well. So overall, step 1 takes about 10 seconds if the drive is unencrypted and less than 20% full. Step 1 will take up to an hour if the drive is encrypted or up to like 80% full. Step 2, move 128 gigs to this new partition from my DERP hard drive. I'm so lucky to have a Thunderbolt SATA adapter at this point. Actually, I have two. SATA transfers at 3 gigabits per second. That's gigabits, not gigabytes. Thunderbolt transfers at up to 6 gigabits per second. So it bottlenecks at 3 gigabits per second. That does not include I/O related to encrypting or decrypting content on the drive. Unfortunately, because of how OSX transfers files, this is significantly slower. This process is much faster in Ubuntu. Like, I can move around files much faster in Ubuntu than in OSX. And don't even get me started on the fucking OSX trash can. Like, really? Like, I don't know if it's like this for everybody now, but if you open your trash, it doesn't just say there's not an empty button. There is a empty securely button, which means that when it writes to your hard drive, it's writing zeros, which for some reason takes a long time. Try putting 10 gigs of data in your trash can and deleting it, and see how long that takes. See how long, just try it. And that process takes much more time if it's 10 gigs of very small files. Like, it almost won't complete. It takes like 8 or 9 hours. Like, and you can't. Oh my god. And if you put files in your trash can, you cannot recover that disk space until you empty your trash can. So if you've got 30 gigs of files in your trash, like, what are you supposed to do? Like wait like 30 hours? Like, it's ridiculous. Unfortunately, because of how OSX transfers files, this is significantly slower. It's much faster in Ubuntu, even on Apple's proprietary hardware. The difference in speed between Ubuntu and OSX is much higher when you're dealing with tens of thousands of small files. So if you've got like 10 gigs of programming projects, it's going to take forever to transfer. But in Ubuntu, it's not really a problem. It transfers as quickly as you would expect 10 gigs of files to transfer. So all in all, step 2 takes at least 10 minutes with Thunderbolt and a single 128 gig file. Step 2 takes 10 times longer with USB, maybe around 100 minutes, almost 2 hours. Step 3, reformat my DERP drive. This is my favorite step because it's quick. It should take less than a minute to just delete everything on that drive. Step 4, boot my computer into Ubuntu. This step takes about 10 minutes, but only if you're a baller like me and have a library of live CDs at arm's length. Step 5, move 128 gigs back to DERP from my laptop's hard drive. Again, moving 128 gigs takes a long time. But now that I'm in Ubuntu and have an XFS drive to write to, I can transfer DERP's contents. So remember, if Ubuntu could just write to an OSX partition, I could have skipped step 1, step 3, and step 4. Skipping these steps doesn't save me much time in this instance, but means that I can actually work on other stuff at the same time, which is almost like I don't lose much time at all. Since I have to restart my computer and load another operating system, this means I have to close everything and just completely interrupts everything. Oh my god. But Ubuntu can't write to OSX partitions, and this is likely because Apple won't give them permission to include the software. So again, Apple, you're making life a little harder than it should be for people that use more than one OS. I mean, to be fair, it's not their product, it's not their problem. In other words, it's not really Apple's job to make sure that Apple products work nicely on other platforms, but it sure would be nice. Step 5, all in all, takes anywhere between 10 minutes and up to 2 hours. Step 6, resize my OSX partition and hope that it doesn't get hosed when I resize it. Step 6 takes 10 seconds in some situations, but up to an hour in others, and it carries the risk of data corruption. So, all in all, this whole process, I have to resize my laptop's hard drive twice. If I had an encrypted hard drive, which I will at some point, not only do I have to resize it and take an hour of doing it each time, but I also have to risk data corruption, which that's happened to me. You just lose everything. So what is the problem with my hard drive? It's an XFS formatted hard drive. XFS is the standard hard drive format for Linux. OSX does not read or write to XFS by default. You must purchase drivers for this, and the drivers are $40, which isn't exactly cheap. Especially for somebody that's using free software because, hey, it's free. I almost didn't want to buy iMovie because it's $15. Like, I don't understand why I can buy a laptop, a really high quality MacBook for like $1,300, but I can't really record video and chop the video to present it the way I want to present it for free. Like, why can't I do that for free? OSX also does not write to NTFS. You must purchase drivers for this as well. Not really a problem unless you have 500 gigs of backed up data from a Windows XP era computer. There actually is a way around this, but it's confusing and leaves you wondering, why the fuck can't I just write to NTFS? What's the problem? Like, you have to trick OSX into mounting the drive with read-write permissions, not just read permissions. But if you do this, OSX will not show the driver in Finder, and you have to open it from the command line, which isn't really a problem to me, but every time I use this drive, I have to go on Google and figure out, like, okay, like, what was that command? Like, what do I have to add to etcfstab? Like, how did I, like, I should just plug, like, I can plug it in and read the files. I can't write to them, though, which makes it really difficult when you're switching between OSX and Ubuntu. Like, if I just need to transfer files, like, it shouldn't matter what OS I'm currently using. I should just be able to drag and drop that shit. So because of interoperability issues, a problem that should only take the time required to transfer data instead becomes a convoluted process that involves hours of time, tons of frustration, and multiple operating systems.